Hey, Steve Riley, welcome to this episode of Great Practice, Great Life. And today I have a colleague, friend, coach, I guess coach conspirator, coaching for other people's greatness, who I've been looking forward to getting on this podcast. And that's my dear friend, attorney Mark Wight. So Mark, how you doing, buddy?
Doing okay. It's a great day out here in the great state of Idaho.
Well, let's talk about that because you are in a metropolitan area and you're in such a booming area that you've actually worked for a period of time to build a dominant practice in your area. But people always tell me that you can't build a great practice in a small community. So why don't you tell everybody where you're at and what you do? And then we can have some fun with that. So where are you?
Well, certainly. I live in Meridian, which is a very quickly growing community, by the way, right next to Boise, Idaho. This is the population center of the great state of Idaho. We have about 650,000 people within 50 miles of where I sit. And half of that is made up of attorneys. No, we do have we have a large concentration of attorneys here in this town. You know what's funny about that though is we're here in the do-it-yourself center of the universe. These are farmers and ranchers, and doggone it, they can do it themselves, which, by the way, when people tell me how hard it is to build a practice where they are, I go, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. come to Boise, baby, where one out of two people are lawyers and the other half know how to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Well, they do have Google, right? Now they have Google.
Yes.
And they have ChatGPT and Bing AI. So, you just can ask AI and AI can, crank out the right document for you.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And by the way, that happens.
Oh, yeah.
And attorneys charge for it. Anyhow, so we'll get to this later, but that is the challenge in my mind. The challenge here is to get focused on people that appreciate working with a professional, getting a professional level of work done that they can have confidence in, and make sure that they've taken care of each other, husband and wife, spouses, and then the kids. And that is our sweet spot. When we get into that community, we are in a good place. And they appreciate the work that we do. And, they hang around and the families hang around. Man, hard to beat.
Yeah, I picked up a few things along the way. But the reason I asked you to do this podcast is because a lot of those lessons, either we've forgotten or we can relearn them or re-explore them at a different dimension. And it's one thing, it's kind of like an athlete. Like when an athlete first starts training, they might be able to do, I'm just making up an exercise, like one push-up. But after years of training, 20 years of training, they may be doing 200 push-ups.
Yeah.
But when they go back and review the fundamentals, they may realize if they tighten the fundamentals and improve their form, improve their technique, and a coach is watching them improve their technique, they might pop out another 100 because over the years, while they've gotten to 200, that 200 might be sloppy. It may not be as disciplined or focused. So as people are listening to this podcast, I'm going to encourage them to listen, not from the perspective of, oh, well, I'm not a brand new lawyer. But these are actually lessons that I think anyone at any point in their life, whether they're playing for a great practice and a great life, can re-examine and reapply and be better at. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And if I could take that for a moment and maybe lead in, one of the first things that I would recommend, or one of the first things that comes to my mind, is Carol Dweck's book on mindset. And she talks about having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And I remember just distinctly coming out of law school thinking that I'd accomplished this great thing. I knew something. I was certain that I knew something. I didn't know what it was at that point, but I was certain that I knew something. And once you get into that particular mindset where you think you know something, it's very easy then to ignore the well-meaning people around you or opportunities to increase that knowledge or learn how to apply it or learn how to use it, to help other people. So that one is one that, man, I see that on an ongoing basis as I coach, is there are people that are kind of stuck. They're just stuck in this place. And it's so hard to get out of that. Now, you've worked hard coaching, and we have hit that concept. Oh my God. How long have we known each other? A dozen years now?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. I think so. I have to go back and look, but you you've been such a wonderful part of my life. So I haven't known in my head. I don't think I've known a period then where you're not part of my life. So it's kind of interesting.
you
So
you poor fool. I don't know what to
well,
tell you, but
I have to think about that. So for us, let's hang here for a second because this is kind of like lesson one. And one of the things that you said that I really like, so the in Dweck's book is terrific. It's genius.
yes,
We can give you a link in the show notes to it. We can also give you a link to a YouTube video or talking about the distinction between growth mindset and fixed. And we also talk about it in our group programs because I think, it has to be probably one of the first core elements of learning is understanding that you don't know what you thought you knew about the subject, right? Like if you begin with the assumption, maybe I don't know what I think I knew about this topic, then you can see things that you couldn't see before. And this is where, and you nailed it for me, is they're being stuck. And so for me, anytime I get stuck, frustrated, confused, and I'm like, what's happening here? I have to take a step back and say, okay, am I approaching this from a fixed mindset where I thought I knew the answer? I thought I knew the strategy. I thought I knew the solution. And I'm really not learning from this experience. I'm just not learning from it. So talk to me more about how this shows up to you in this program, advising and coaching lawyers. Like, how's this show up for you? Because it may show up in a variety of different ways, and people are listening to this saying, I got an incredibly growth mindset. And that to me is kind of like a clue that you may not. Yeah, that's good. So it becomes almost a ceiling for growth. And so when you are certain, and obviously I just want to do a quick distinguishment here. As a lawyer, you're making judgment calls on behalf of a client on a legal technical matter. Really what Mark and I are kind of distinguishing here is inside the business side of your practice.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to tell you that you're making the wrong judgment call on how to argue emotion, but what are going to encourage you to do, because my experience is most lawyers, when they're arguing legal technical stuff, they're open to always learning more. Like that's where we actually have an open mindset because we always can be better. But when it comes to our practices, we're kind of blind that we think we're better. And the fact that we think we're better is usually the invisible ceiling, the cap, the glass ceiling that we put on top of ourselves. It's the learning lid, so to speak, that we're putting on top of ourselves. So what you're saying is being open, and first part of being open is learning how to communicate, and communicate means listening. And sometimes it requires you to slow down to listen, to actually hear what people are saying. So number one for you is being aware of growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and paying attention to how those things show up for you in your practice, in your life. So I think that makes sense. Anything you want to say about that before we go to number two?
This kind of, for me, bleeds into two other things. The next one that I want to mention, I guess, then we'll get to the third one. The second one is we use it as that we use that fixed mindset that I already know. We were using that as a mask for fear. We're afraid. And so instead of being open to Steve telling me something I don't want to hear, I don't know what to do with it, I already know. Therefore, I don't need to listen. I can quit taking notes. We can move on. And I don't know. I see that enough, and I remember enough to go, there's an element of fear. There's the, what does Brene Brown call it? The vulnerability. I don't want anybody to tell me I'm wrong. So I'm not going there. And fortunately or unfortunately, that's how we learn, is somebody tells us you could do this better. This is, you know what, you didn't do it as well as you can. And isn't that the essence of coaching, or at least performance coaching, Steve? Is you got to tell people you can do better.
You can do better. Yeah, you raise a very interesting question, actually. And so as I'm listening to you and thinking about this, the fear is a response to a belief of something being true. So what's between you and learning is that you're kind of hitting the things that you think are true that aren't true. And the only way you can really test those assumptions about whether that's true or not is to try and take the feedback and the coaching about how to grow, or maybe being open to growth. And another way of how I see it in my life, and however you're listening, and Mark, however you see it, I have to remind myself that sometimes when I believe a truth that's not actually true, that's a delusion. And sometimes I cling to my delusions because they're really working for me up to a certain point in time. Like, my delusions are working. Yeah. So you ready? So first,
absolutely.
Mark Powers, the founder of the company, is the person you're quoting. Mark's, never, ever stop marketing. And Mark says that, and then we'll set this up and then we'll talk about the term. Mark says that because one of the things that we see is inconsistent cash flow. And what happens is the lawyer, they get in too much business. And when they get in too much business and they go focus on the business and they catch up on the business, then they realize they're out of business and they run back out to get more business. So that's inconsistent cash flow is a result of inconsistent marketing. So that's one of the reasons that Mark Wight's trying to encourage you to keep marketing, so you can keep consistent cash flow. How much you're marketing really depends at where you're at in your practice. So I'll ask you that question in a second. But here's the thing I had to come to terms with, Mark, is I had to convert in my mind that marketing and sales was really about helping people.
Yes.
And I had to convert in my mind that how many people do I want to help? Which for me was an important distinction, because I didn't see myself as a marketing or sales person. And some people may categorize me as that. But kind of what you said is I thought that I could help people that align with my values and saw what myself and my team were trying to do. And the core of it, I wanted to feel like I was helping people. And you can't help someone if you're not out there telling people how you help, the way you help, the type of people you want to help. And so if you're hesitant about marketing, at the core of this is really helping people. And marketing sometimes gets a bad rep because it sounds like, you're selling something, or you're pushing something off on things that people don't want. And it took me a long time to really appreciate people want to be helped. That's why they're looking for you. That's why they're looking for other people. They have a problem they need to solve, and they need help solving the problem. They can't find you if they don't know that you're looking for them. And that's part of this for me. And sometimes I think I used to get lost in the fear of marketing as marketing, because I'm not a good marketer. I'm not a great salesperson. But if I believe in my heart I'm helping someone, and I know that I'm helping someone, then I'm a lot more confident in my messaging, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Yeah,
no,
I like that polish on what I said. And what I work with in the first couple of sessions is, if you don't understand the value of what you are doing and the value that you're offering to someone, if you don't understand, how are they going to understand? If you don't appreciate the things that you can do for them, you can make life better for a bunch of people if you understand what you do and how you do it, how it works. We have this conversation a lot when they tell me that they sell wills or trusts.
Okay.
We're not doing documents.
Right.
That's at the back end. Once I understand where you are and what it is that we need to do. So to me, that's where we start, is what's your value proposition? So I like what you're saying and how you're saying it. If I'm not serving, if I'm not offering a service, a well-needed service, by the way, I'm with you. Then it is absolutely retail sales, right? I'm just walking down and I'm trying to sell people something they don't need.